I was going to give Dan's commercial, but he gave it himself. If you want to check Dan out, again, Google him. He's on TV all the time as America's Accountant. He's a lot of fun to watch. So there's plenty of clips on TV for Dan if you want more entertainment. All right, moving on. We're going to go to parent advocacy. So our next speaker is Cheryl Dispoto, and I met Cheryl last year or so, and I was really impressed because as soon as I met her, she spoke with such passion as a parent of a special needs child. She was just so passionate about how difficult and challenging it was navigating the system of how to advocate for her son and just starting college and all the things that she had to do getting to college and all of the things that that they're experiencing now that he's in college. And she's gone through this and did all of the work and all of the experiences that so many people we know go through. And I thought it would just be really nice to have Cheryl share her experiences as a parent. She's also an attorney. She's here really as a parent advocate, and the things that she's done and experienced that hopefully will make things easier for others. So thank you, Cheryl.
Good morning. Thank you, Richard, for that introduction. I think that I'm here to provide you all today with the human element that Richard was alluding to a little bit earlier. There's been a lot of information here today, and we've heard about a lot of different things navigating special needs. Something that Nancy said earlier from Plan New Jersey really resonated with me. She said that she has to wear all these different hats, and in addition to having to be an accountant and have accounting skills and know about how to manage trusts, and then she has to sometimes read the trust documents and find legalese in there, and even though she's not a lawyer, and then she has to know about the therapies for her clients, and then they have to do visits for her clients with needs. She sounded like a special needs mom to me. And it really resonated with what she was saying. My name is Cheryl Dispoto. I am a mom to Jonathan Langel, who is now 19 years old. My son Jonathan was born with a very rare form of congenital muscular dystrophy. He's one of 50 people on the planet with his type. It's called intermediate collagen 6. Nobody's ever heard of it except for 2 doctors at the NIH and 1 doctor at Morgan Stanley, Columbia in New York City, who's also a researcher on it. He is a power wheelchair user now. It is a slowly progressive disease. 2 years after Jonathan was born, my daughter Charlotte was born. Charlotte does not have the same diagnosis as her brother, but she does have a microdeletion on chromosome 23, which it causes something called Phelan-McDermott syndrome. Nobody's ever heard of that in this room either, because she is one of 2,500 people on the planet with Phelan-McDermott syndrome. Now, we are getting new people diagnosed every year, and we're adding to that number because of the advances in genetic testing, but it is still considered extremely rare disease. We are a rare disease family, so what does that mean? It means that my husband and I never play the Powerball because we've already won the Powerball with those odds twice in this lifetime. So we save our money and we don't buy lottery tickets. In all seriousness though, what it means is there's not a lot of information about what our children have. And so 20 years ago when I brought Jonathan home from the hospital, I remember carrying that little bucket into the living room. He was in the hospital a week longer than I was in intensive care. This was totally unexpected, a big shock. None of this runs on either side of our families. And I remember putting the bucket down in the living room and looking at my husband and saying, now what? I think every new parent brings home a baby from the hospital and we wish we had a manual, and maybe it's the lawyer in me that wanted some sort of a book to read to know what to do next. I think families that come home with children with complex medical needs and disabilities, we really, really need that manual. And I can remember being a young new mom and feeling a bit isolated, like I was the only one that has this little baby that's not hitting milestones, and what do I do next? And how do I assemble these medical teams and these teams of therapists, and how am I gonna do all of that? And I was a trained attorney, not doing anything in disability back then. I did take a long leave at the time to care for my son, and I had to really learn by doing. Even with my background, it is very complex. You heard a lot of presentations today about needs trusts, special education, finance, accounting, Plan New Jersey, estate planning, all of those things. As a special needs mom, I need to know about all of those things. This started 19 years ago when I had to put my son in the early intervention system and get services. Then I had to navigate the public school system and IEP land, dreaded IEP meetings, and it's what prompted me to become a special education attorney, perform care, SSI, DBD, voc rehab. Gwen Orlowski is going to follow me and she's going to talk about some of those services in the state, as is Samantha. It's enough to make your head spin, and I can tell you, even though I'm in it for so long, even just listening to it now, I'm actually in it currently because I can tell you I have files on my desk, and I'm in the middle of working with DED and Medicaid for something for my son right now, and there are deadlines and there are pressures. I'm guessing there are a lot of attorneys in the room, so when your clients come to you, we're coming to you exhausted already because we're caring for children with complex medical needs. And on top of that, we have to know the system. And learning the system is not so easy. So how did I do that, right? I didn't have a manual. I got a little lucky, I think, because I was lucky to have an early diagnosis for both of my children. My son, who sort of knew we were dealing with neuromuscular disease at birth. And with my daughter, I had a confirmed genetic test at 18 months. So that led me to be able to register with Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Phelan McDermott Foundation, and they have been tremendous resources for our family. They connected me with Columbia in New York for Jonathan, and the NIH down in Washington, where I've been with him, and we've been studied. For Phelan McDermott syndrome, the lead researcher, one of the lead researchers on the team is out of Mount Sinai in New York. I'm very fortunate to live in this part of the country where there are doctors who know about these things. I was adverse to social media, but I eventually capitulated, and I do find that there are tremendous resources through Phelan and through MBA and Cure CMD, to which I'm now an advocacy board member. On Facebook, it's a way to connect with other families from across the country, and really there are families from all over the world on there. It's how we share information, especially when we're dealing with rare disease and when research is coming out all the time, in real time. A lot of times those memos are coming across Facebook, and they're directing us to the websites, and a lot of the physicians are also connected to us through social media. You have to find your community. If you have a diagnosis for your child, you need to connect with that community, and not just to help them with their fundraising efforts. They have resources for families, and a lot of webinars, parent advocacy trainings. I have spent hours. My evenings are doing the School of Google and signing up for Zooms and webinars and trainings. And I spend a lot of my spare time while other people are surfing TikTok. I am reading and researching and communicating with other parents from all over the world for my children. I also have the benefit of having a really good pediatrician who connected me very early on with a veteran physical therapist who was sort of a really a guru in dealing with high needs families, and a very good advocate. And she told me very early on, don't fall into the trappings of the new moms that are trying to get help for their children, and they're having early intervention, for example, coming to their house, and the caseworker, a very nice caseworker, is going to come in, and you're going to tell that caseworker, oh, my child's wonderful, they're so cute, they do all these things. You're not going to get the help that you need. need to remain steady, and you need to know what your objective is, and you need to learn how to talk about your child. And unfortunately, it's often counterintuitive to being a mom. Everybody wants to talk positively about their children, but you have to learn to speak critically and objectively. And it's the same thing when you go into your very first IEP meeting. That can also be very, very challenging. I'm running out of time, so I am going to tell you that I have since, now that my children are getting older, I have shifted to doing more advocacy work at a federal level, working with CureCMD to lobby federal legislators on issues that are important for children with rare disease and neuromuscular disease. I'm not going to get into all the specifics. Gwen is going to talk about the upcoming proposed cuts to Medicaid, which the only thing I will say about that, that's at the forefront for every disability rights organization in this country. Whether you are an affected family or not, or just we're looking for allies, we need every single person to contact their representatives and tell them, please, no cuts to Medicaid. This will be devastating to the disability community. Before I wrap up, my son Jonathan wanted to be here today, but he could not. He had a conflict, and he was asking me what I was going to talk about. And I said, well, your diagnosis, and a little bit. And he said, and my sister's too. And I said, yes. And why? Well, because, you know, it's a lot. Mom, it's a lot. And I said, well, I know it's a lot. And he said, yeah, but, you know, we're used to it because it's just our life. Why don't we end with a little bit of a positive story for everybody, because it's really heavy. So I said, that's a really good idea. And Richard, at the beginning, kind of alluded a little bit to my son as a professional working actor. So now I'll put my mom hat on and take away my advocacy hat, and because I'm not looking for anything from any of you. My son Jonathan, right now, as I give this presentation, is taking his last final exam of his freshman year at Fordham University Lincoln Center, where he has lived on campus independently with his power wheelchair, with the help of a personal care attendant that comes in every morning. He is a Dean's List student, scholarship recipient, really a little rock star. He will describe himself to you because he hates being described as an inspiration, like the young lady in the TED Talk. He will describe himself to you as a professional actor, singer, trained musician who happens to use the power wheelchair. And I'm very proud that that's how he sees himself. I'll give you a shameless plug. This weekend, you can all go home and watch his movie. It's 13 musical, streaming on Netflix. He's since done other projects. That's his story to tell. Maybe we can get him here next year. He does a lot of presentations and has his own platform about greater film and television and media representation for people with disabilities. My daughter Charlotte is the joy of my life. She is a student at UCLC in Hoboken for out-of-district placement since the 2nd grade. She loves music like her brother. She is in an excellent job training skills program, and she's scheduled, hopefully at 21, to go into their Pride Day program. And I'll actually be back in this area tomorrow night for a fundraiser to raise money for UCLC and for Pride. This was a very big transition year in our house because Charlotte lost her brother to college. So there's a lot of talk this week because Jonathan's coming home, picking him up on Friday. You know, I had, when I was a new mom, I said that, you know, I was a little upset that my son was missing all his milestones. My children are very close to each other. They're 2 years apart, they're best friends. And when they were little and all through the years, Jonathan would drop things on the floor like a toy, and my daughter, with all her disabilities, would intuitively know to come over and pick it up from the floor from him to help him. And conversely, Jonathan, who is very verbal and articulate, would be her spokesperson out in the world, and he still is to this day, and he takes her everywhere. I often drop him off at the mall, and you'll see her, she doesn't leave the side of his wheelchair. I think back as a young mom to being concerned about missing milestones. I've never had a child that ever hit a milestone on time, and it's just It's perfectly fine. They're a perfect pair, and while this has been an imperfect, difficult journey, I think we're quite a perfect family. So thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Gwen, and she's going to talk to you about some of those things that I already mentioned that I'm constantly navigating, and that can be the bane of my existence, but are excellent resources. And also, I included resources if there are families here in the back of the guidebook. There are certain resources there with website links. Thank you so much.